At noon, the sky dimmed. Shadows stretched in the middle of the day. Crops withered. Empires stumbled. This isn't a prophecy. It happened. The year was 536. Chroniclers from Ireland to Constantinople wrote the same chilling line. The sun gave no heat, not for days, not for months, for more than a year. Imagine waking to a light the color of ash, no blue, no warmth, just a cold glow like winter trapped in glass. Birdsong fades, frost in summer, grain heads empty, mothers counting kernels, kings counting soldiers, and no one knows why. In Constantinople, Procopius watched the sky. He wrote that the sun shone like the moon, bleak, without rays. The Irish annals called it a failure of bread. Chinese court records speak of frost and famine. The world's voices agree. Something veiled the sun. But what? For centuries, the story sounded like myth, a medieval exaggeration. Then the ice began to speak. In Greenland and Antarctica, ice locks away time. Layer by layer, snow becomes history. Scientists drilled deep. They pulled up white cylinders of silence. Inside, the year 536 came alive. A sharp spike, sulfates frozen in place, volcanic fingerprints, not one blast, two, maybe three. A world punched twice in 6 years, first around 536, then around 540. Aerosols rose high into the stratosphere. They spread like a veil over the planet. Sunlight bounced back into space. Temperatures fell by as much as 2 degrees. It doesn't sound like much. It is. Just a few degrees can move harvests by a month, kill pollinators, shift the path of rain, turn plenty into panic. Tree rings agree. Everywhere, they shrink. A chorus of stunted growth from Scandinavia to the Alps to the Tian Shan. Trees speak when people starve. Some remember 3 years of cold, some longer, and then the plague arrived. In 541, ships carried grain and rats. Fleas jumped. The disease crossed from Egypt to Byzantium like a spark on dry straw. The plague of Justinian began. Did the cold cause it? No single cause tells a whole story. But the chill stressed bodies, famine-crowded cities, trade still moved, illness found its paths. History felt the weight. In the East, Justinian's empire strained. He had dreams of Rome reborn, armies in Italy, treasuries thin. Then the sky dimmed, and the tax rolls shrank. In Persia, a rival empire watched. On the steppes, hungry riders shifted routes. In Britain, archaeology shows huts abandoned, fields quiet, coins vanished from the soil for a time. Trade faltered. People turned inward. In Scandinavia, myth remembers a 3-year winter before the end of days. Thimble winter. Is it memory or poetry? We cannot know, but echoes matter because they tell us what fear looks like when the sun won't shine. So where did the ash come from? The ice holds more than chemicals. It holds glass, tiny shards, tephra. Under microscopes, they gleam like clues. Their chemistry points north, to Iceland, an eruption big enough to lace the stratosphere with dust. Some studies connect the second spike, around 540, to Ilopango in Central America, a caldera in modern El Salvador, a blast that buried valleys in pumice, 2 hemispheres wounded in sequence, a planetary 1-2 punch. Imagine the logistics. You're the quartermaster for an emperor. You count sacks of wheat for an army in Italy. Then the harvest fails. Egypt's Nile Valley gives less. Carts arrive half full. You cut rations. Soldiers grumble. Barbarians test the borders. Your enemies see your hunger. And in the cities, bakers stretch flour with chaff. Prices rise. Gold buys less bread. People move. They always do. But where do you go when the sky itself is broken? Archaeologists sift the trash pits of the 6th century. They find fewer exotic shells, less pepper from India, broken jars repaired and repaired again. A culture of scarcity leaves quiet fingerprints. Glassmakers stop. The purity of sand changes with the winds and the markets. Roman window glass grows cloudy. Even sunlight through a pane becomes a metaphor. But amid the dimming, there was ingenuity. Farmers shifted crops, barley over wheat, sheep over cattle. Maritime traders found new harbors, smaller ships, shorter runs. Survival is a craft, and people practiced it. The mystery of 536 isn't just the science, it's the scale. A volcano on a distant island changes the fate of a continent, of several. It shows how tightly bound the world already was, how fragile, how resilient, and it leaves a question that will not go away. What do you do when the sky turns against you? When your calendar loses its seasons? When the stories you tell yourself about tomorrow stop working? In this story, clues lie in ice, wood, and words. Each piece is partial. Together, they form a shadow. We can measure temperature. We can map ash. We can count rings and graves. We cannot measure dread. But we can listen to the monk who writes of dim days, to the farmer who buries seed that will not sprout, to the emperor who sends orders into a fog. The year without a true summer was real. The people inside it were as real as we are, and their choices echo. The dark can teach. If we let it, the dark can teach. If we let it, our ancestors did. They looked up. They read the night. No book in sight, no compass, just stars. The sky became a map, a calendar, a clock. In the Pacific, wayfinders set out with no metal needle. They sat low in their canoes. They felt the swell with their hips. They tasted the wind. They watched the star houses rise and fall, each star with a name, each path with a memory. In West Africa, storytellers timed epics to Orion's tilt. In Arabia, caravans crossed sand by the Arc of the Pleiades. In the Andes, farmers planted by dark constellations, not just stars, the black shapes between them, llamas and serpents drawn in starlit voids. Night offered cover. It also enforced patience. Monks knew that. Candle after candle blistered fingers, ink thick as midnight, pages that glowed with gold. Illuminated, the word is no accident. They copied lines by whisper. They guarded letters like embers. While empires rose and fell, the dark kept the script alive. Elsewhere, Baghdad watched the heavens. A caliph's city pulsed with scholars. They built instruments to track a planet's stagger. They named stars, measured shadows, and tamed eclipses with math. Night didn't feel like a fear there. It felt like a laboratory. Sometimes darkness became a rope to pull on, a promise and a plan. On a riverbank in December, a general climbed into a boat. Ice shoved the hull. Oars dipped without a splash. Washington trusted the black more than the day. Across the Delaware, surprise lived in the shadows. The crossing cracked a war open. It began under a sky that hid the breath of men. Not all journeys chose night. Some had no choice. In the American South, enslaved families listened for owls, not as birds, as signals. They waited until the whip slept. They stepped into the timber and lifted their eyes. The North Star did not flicker. They moved by moss, by creek, by memory. Lanterns meant discovery, so they carried none. A song held in a throat until a door creaked, a quilt pattern on a line before dusk. The path was written in code, crossed only after sunset. Cities learned darkness fast. The bellman's round, the watchman's rattle, the shutters against thieves, curfews tolled from towers. Night had rules before it had light. Then fire on a stick became fire in a globe, oil to gas, gas to filament, filament to wire humming in walls. We told ourselves we had conquered night, but night changed us first. Sleep split, two sleeps with a wakeful watch in between. A quiet hour when diaries filled and prayers rose. Then, under lamps, factories roared through midnight. Railway timetables ignored the moon. A new class was born, the night shift. With it came new trades. Lamplighters leaned on ladders. They sparked streets into orange tunnels. Policemen learned the art of listening more than seeing. The metropolis acquired another face, one that only came out after dusk. War found it too. Searchlights combed the clouds over London. Sirens sheared the silence. Curtains thick as tar hung in every flat. A match might as well be a map for a bomber. Neighbors felt their way to shelters. Children learned to count seconds between sounds. Blackout taught a capital to survive with its eyes closed. Pilots flipped the equation. They learned to find without seeing. Radar drew pictures in radio fog. Invisible echoes became shapes and speeds. From that glowing scope, a new sight was born, one that owed everything to absence. The sea had always been a kind of night, a depth beyond candles and moons. Sailors guessed at shoals by the smell of weed. They read breakers like script. Then sonar wrote its own alphabet, clicks, pings, returns. We listened into black water and made a map from sound. Astronomy pushed deeper still. Far from cities, domes opened like pupils. Mirrors caught ancient light. Photographic plates revealed ghosts too faint for eyes. Redshift tugged galaxies apart on paper. The universe expanded in a midnight lab. Cosmic background murmured, a fossil of a blaze, now cool as ash. We met it in darkness and learned how everything began. Meanwhile, on the ground, the stars started to vanish. Neon ate Orion. Billboards erased the Milky Way. Children grew up under a permanent twilight. We forgot what silence looked like. Some fought back. Park rangers drew circles on maps. Dark sky reserves took shape. Lights pointed down, not up. Glass hid bulbs. Humans stepped outside at 2 a.m. and gasped. That gasp had been common once, 1,000 years ago, 100, even 50. Dark bred danger. But it also bred art, night markets, midnight sermons, jazz that crawled out of basements and into dawn, writers who found words when the city sighed, painters who watched sodium and shadow create new colors, photographers chasing the way fog eats a street lamp. For millennia, rituals waited for the dark. Bonfires on solstices,